Time for some basic file management. So again, as alluded to, I've carried on from the previous video, and yep, we're going to be doing some file management in this one. Removing, moving, copying, we're going to do DD. We've already touched on touch, so we won't really go into that any further, but we'll do a load of file management bits in this video, more useful commands, and yeah, why carry on? Let's go. So here we are again in our favorite VM, the one we've been using throughout this entire tutorial series, and nothing again has changed since the last one other than I've cleaned up all those test files. So I'm actually going to create a new test file again, and we're going to do hello world, my name is Drew, and that's all I'm putting in this one. So this one, as I say, is going to be more about file manipulation, things like that. So first thing I want to do is show you how to copy something. So I can copy test to test2. And right now we have two files, and if I look at test, we have that. If I look at test2, we have the same content. This is just copying a file to another place. Now you can also just copy it somewhere else. So I could do copy test to another location, such as var log, and if I don't put the name on there, it will dump it into that directory under the name test. If I want to give it a different name, I can call it a test5. I'm going to need sudo here because var log is admin access, so I'll quickly do that. And now we can see in var log we have a file called test5, and that file will contain hello, my name is Drew, hello world, my name is Drew, and there it is. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to hit yes, and it will say permission denied because of sudo. So let's do that. So that's the copy command. So the next command I want to go through is called find. Find is really useful for searching. It's very powerful if you've got an idea of what you're looking for. So find is usually run like so. You would put find, then the path you want to look in. So that could be root, current directory, one directory above, direct path. I'm going to search in home. We're going to look for a file named test, and we are going to say that the type of that thing is a F for file. So I'm going to press enter on that, and it will return one file. If I don't know what it's called exactly, but I know it has the word test in it, I could do test star, or I could do star test star. So I could say I know the word test is somewhere in the file. Let's have a look. I could say I know it starts with test, but it has something afterwards, such as test2. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I could also do a variation of that as well. It's pretty powerful for searching. We can also search for directories. So I could say I'm looking for a folder, a directory named Drew. In home, I know it's in there somewhere, so I'd press enter on that and it would give me Drew back. There's more we can do with this as well though. So we can do things like the execute command. So the execute command allows us to execute something on the thing we find. So we could do something like execute chmod. Chmod we will cover in a video shortly, and that would allow us to change the permissions. For example, I could say I want to change permissions to 755, and that would change the permissions of a particular directory. However, I'm not going to do it on a directory. I'm going to do a file because it would be safer to do it on a file. I don't want to change the directory of the permissions of my home directory and break things. So we'll just do it on test, and then all we do is put two brackets at the end, a backslash, and a semicolon. Now this will basically find any files named test. We'll do all of them. So what we'll do first is, before I run that, I'm going to put a hash at the start. That will prevent the command running. It will just comment it out essentially. We're going to take a look at the file permissions for test and test2, and I'm going to change these to be 600, so it's read and then no other permissions. So we'll go back up, delete that comment, and we'll change that for 600. And I want to do it to everything that begins with test. Now if we have a look again, you can see that it's changed the permissions for both of them. Now, this isn't always the best way of doing it. There's something called xargs, which we'll cover later, and that is probably the best way of doing this when running a command like this. So that's fine. It's pretty powerful, as you can see, and you can do a lot more with it than what I've just shown you there. Next, we're going to take a look at the make directory command. So to make a directory, we can have a look here. We've got no directories here. I can make a new directory called my new directory, and now that exists. We might find though that we need to make multiple directories. So for example, I have the my new directory, but now I need 3 more directories inside, and that's make directory, my new directory, 1, 2, 3. And you'll see here, it cannot create the directory because there's no such file or directory. Now, the reason for that is because it's trying to create the directory 3, but 1 and 2 don't exist. Now, if you need it to basically traverse and make all of them at the same time, you just put -p on the end. And if you do that, we can see my new directory has 1, 2, and 3. And now we can just use that as a normal set of directories. And that's the make directory command. Now we can move things around. We can copy directories, by the way. So we can copy my new directory to my new directory 2. However, doing that will not copy the subdirectories, as you'll see here. Look, omitting directory. So if you have a look now, we'll see my new directory was not copied to anything else because we didn't provide the recursive flag. So it won't go ahead and copy it because there's folders of directories inside it. So if we do the -r, we have the my new directory and my new directory 2, which both contain the same set of directories now because it's a copy. So we're going to go through the move command next. So we can just move directories and files around. So I can move test to test 3 or 4. And now we have test 2 and test 4. We can also move directories. Now you don't need to have a recursive flag for this one. So I can say move my new directory 2 to my new directory 3. And that will just do it because everything inside will move with it essentially. So we can see there, that's how we move a directory. If you want to rename a directory, just use the move command. We've obviously used the ls command a number of times, but ls will list contents of a directory and you can do quite a bit with it. -a will list everything, including the hidden files. That's what these ones with dots are. We can do long listing, which will give us the permissions, the owner, the group owner, the file size, and the dates modified, I believe that is. But there's a lot you can do. Like you can do even more information if you wanted to. We can add I on the end, see what sort of inodes it takes up, and yeah, there's quite a lot you can do here. I recommend having a play around with that and seeing what you can get with it. Again, as always, the man page is there to show you everything you need. So yep, have at it. So the next command I want to just quickly run over is the remove command. We've seen it a couple of times. I've been using it as we've been along. I've just been removing files, you know, just remove a file like this, and that's fine. However, when it comes to removing a directory, it doesn't really work. So if I try and remove my new directory 3, by the way, the reason I'm getting these listed up is because I'm tabbing. So if I tab, they will autofill. If there isn't a way it can fill, it will give you everything up to the point that you've typed. So that's why I get both of these listed. So I'm going to do remove my new directory. It can't do it because it's a directory. Now that's fine. Let's use the other command we have, which is remove directory. So I'm going to try and remove 1 from new directory 3. And it's now failing because the directory is not empty. And that's true because we have 2 and 3 in there. So if I remove 3 and then 2 and then 1 and then that, well, you can see straight away, if that's 10 directories deep for whatever reason, then that's going to become a bit of a pain to manage. So there is another command which you can do, and that is remove -recursive. And you can do my new directory. We'll just go for 1 at the moment. And you'll see now that's recursively removed everything out of there. So if I have a look in my new directory, we don't have 1 anymore. So it's removed 1 and everything underneath it. In some cases, you might find that you get prompted to remove something. It will say, are you sure? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. And it's usually things that have root permissions. For example, it's a protected file or something like that. Now, there is a brute force method, which I strongly recommend you avoid using, but for the sake of brevity, I will show it to you. So I'm going to just do that make directory -p again and remake all those directories. Now, in the case that it won't allow you to remove everything with the rm recursive, then there is one more flag you can give. If you cannot sit there for 1,000 files being prompted, are you sure you want to remove this directory? Then you can add F.
Go to red alert. Go to red alert. 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 Red alert.
Now F is brute force. It will remove everything and it will not prompt you. You will not get a prompt. Now, I cannot stress this enough. This is a very dangerous way of removing things because that's gone. That's it. It's gone. Look. Now, you might go, yeah, well, that's fine. You've just removed everything as you wanted to. True, but imagine doing this accidentally. Now, if I pressed enter now, granted it would fail because I don't have super user permissions. But if I was logged in as root and ran that command, I'd kill the server. I would actually kill the VM because all of the binary files would just be deleted and it wouldn't question it. It would just go, yeah, sure, let's go, let's have at it. And it would delete everything. Trust me, I speak from experience. When I was first learning Linux, I actually had a bin directory in my home folder, just like so, which is totally legit because it means I can put things like a script inside the bin directory in my home folder, and it means it's available anywhere on my machine. Whenever I'm working away, I can just run a script from that bin folder without having to cd into the bin folder or do a direct reference to it. What I did try to do though was I tried to remove recursively ~bin. The problem was I fat fingered the keyboard and I missed that tilde, so I just deleted the /bin directory. And if we have a look in /bin, there's a lot of very important binaries in there. You know, just things like pulling one out of the hat, ls. So I couldn't ls anymore. And what else could I not do? Let's have a look. Under M. Oh, I couldn't remove anything anymore, or remove a directory, or do anything because I just deleted every single binary on my machine. I had no choice. I had to reinstall my system that day. I had to mount that system into a new one, back everything up that I could, and then wipe my computer and start again. So again, I cannot stress enough, rm-rf is a very dangerous command. Try not to use it unless you absolutely have to. Absolutely have to. I cannot stress that enough. Okay. Lecture over. So in the previous video, I mentioned the tar command. There's also something called gzip. So gzip can be used to turn a load of files into gzip files. So if I just go through and do test2, for example, we can now look and test2 has been turned into a gzip file. That's really useful because we can just zip a file up into gzip and it just compresses it. If we have a quick look at the man page for gzip, it just compresses or expands a file. So I can unzip that now by doing gunzip, and that will turn it back into test2. If I wanted all of these files into a gzip, then there are ways with gzip, but I would recommend just using tar, because you can do tar, create, verbose. In fact, you don't even need to see the verbose, and you can say I want it to be a gzip file, and the file name will be testtar.gzip, and we want test2, test3, test4, and test5 in there. And we can do that, and now we have this testr.gz, and we know that's going to work because if I do gunzip now and then do testr.gz, you can see now it's got rid of the original file and turned it into a tar. And now we can do tar, extract the file of testr, and that would extract those files here. So let's just remove test2, test3, test4, test5. I'm going to show you a little trick there in a minute as well, by the way, because you'll see that's getting a bit frustrating, just constantly having to do the same word with the numbers on the end. So if I extract them, we now have those files back. So that's, you can see that was a gzip, it got extracted to a tar, and then it got extracted into the actual files that they were themselves. So there's a few ways that you can work with this stuff, but however, you can see that gunzip just extracted the tar. It's not really useful if you're dealing with it. So another way you can just extract the gzip and the tar at the same time is with another command. So let's start off again by removing test2. And before I do that, that quick trick I was talking about, you can do a bracket 3, 4, 5, and then close the curly bracket, and you'll see this will remove test2, test3, test4, and then test5. And that's just a nice shorthand way of getting around repetitive things. So they all start with a test, but then the numbers on the end change. So that's one way you can do it. Another way we could have done it was test2 ... 5, and that would say remove everything between 2 and 5. So that's another option there. Anyway, so I digress. Tar, extract gzip file, and then the name of the gzip file, so testtar.gz. And you can see now it's extracted the tar and the files within it straight there, and we've still got the original gzip file there. So there's a couple of options there available to us to extract and create archives for gzip. Gzip is more compressed, so you can create a tar, which is just a package of all the files, and then you can compress it down with gzip. There's also something called bzip2 and bunzip, so bzip2 and buzip2, so bunzip, so bunzip2. They're like the gz, but it's just a different compression algorithm. So yeah, I won't go through them now, but they essentially work in the same way. And again, tar has support for it. Off the top of my head, I think it's actually J instead of Z, and it would be BZ. Now, don't quote me on that one right now, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Most of the time you'll see gzs knocking around. You might see xzs as well. That's another option. But there's a few different ones, but I just wanted to cover gzip in this one. We also have something called dd. Now, dd is used to take an input file and put it into an output file. So one of the main things you'll see, for example, I have used so far, I used this d command previously, and this was to basically get the input file of SDB with a block size count of 1. It redirected standard out and standard error into this pipe, which then fed through strings, and then we grepped out for these words. So dd can take the contents of an input file. So if I was just to create an example off the top of my head here, I'm just going to have a look at dd input file equals test2, just to see what happens. So you can see here that we've read the content of that. So if I just get rid of that pipe, again, you can see that it will tell you there's one record in, one record out, 28 bytes copied, the time it took to copy, and the size that was copied. Now I could say output file equals test10, for example, and now I can say cat out test10, and we'll just see the contents in there. It's like a copy essentially, but it's a little bit more powerful than just a copy, let's say. I'm not going to go too deep into this right now, but you can, instead of just copying a file, you could copy the contents of a disk from one disk to another one. So you could do something like dd input file equals dev sda1, and you could put the output file as dev sdb1, for example. And that would be a way of cloning this disk onto this disk, block for block. It's a block copy, essentially. It's a very powerful command. I'm not going to go into it here, but as always, have a look at the man. It's converting and copying a file, but you can go down to the block level, and that's how, when I say the block level, what I mean is you copy the entire contents and state of one disk to another one. So yeah, it can be really powerful in that respect. There's other commands such as file. If we look at the man for file, you can say determine a file type. So let's have a look. We can do file test2. Not fail, sorry, file. Let's spell it correctly. And it tells us that it's an ASCII text file. And we can do file. Let's just pick one of the binary files, for example. We can do, in fact, let's go for var log, and we'll grab one of the dmessage.1.gz. And that will tell us that it's a gzip compressed data file. I could have just done it on the test-r, for example, on that one actually. So if we do test-r, you can see there, gzip compressed data file from Unix, original size. We can do file on user bin ls, and that will tell us that it's an elf, basically. It's a binary file, is what it's telling us here. There's a really useful element of file there, because the thing is, this is technically a text file. And if you didn't know what it was, you could just run a file command against it, and you can go, okay, this is an ASCII text file. Cool. I can edit this with vim, for example. You can copy files to and from archives with cpio. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this command right now, but let's just take a look at the man for this one. You can see here we can do all sorts with this, to be honest. There's a lot to go on here. You can extract archives, you can create archives, you can copy from one archive to another archive. So for example, a tar, for example, you could copy files from one to another. It's a pretty useful command. I think I've only ever used it once or twice, to be honest, so I won't go into the massive amount of details for it here, but again, it's available to you if you want it. I think the final commands that I'm going to show you are t and xargs. So the first one is t. T is not spelled T-E-A, it's spelled T-E-E. And it's useful for, in my experience anyway, what I've used it for is for printing, when I'm printing something that needs logging out to the terminal, but also needs putting into a log file itself, then that's when it comes in handy. So for example, if I do echo, this is a log entry, then it will print out this as a log entry. Now imagine you've got, this actually coming from a service or a binary file of some sort, and this is just spitting out to the, you've written a script, let's say you've written a script, and this is being spat out, then that's useful. But if you want a historical kind of record of it, then you need it in a log file as well. So if I, in my script, did this, put it into script.log, for example, the problem we've got now is it's not being spat out to the screen, it's only going into the script.log. So if I have a look in script.log, there it is. So what I can do is I can actually echo this And instead of redirecting the output to script.log, I can pipe it into T and then script.log. And what I'd actually get is the output to the screen. And then if I cat out script.log, we can see I've got a log entry, and I can just do that multiple times. And yeah, that's there. But you can see it's just overwriting every time. So what you can actually do with T, if we have a look, we can append to the log file. So what we could do now is -a. Let's do that a few times and take a look at that again. And now we have multiple entries in our log. That's where T can come in really useful. So yep, as it says, it reads from standard import and writes to standard output and files. Yeah, that's a really useful command. The final one we're going to look at is xargs. So with xargs, it's a way of converting standard input into arguments for a command. The best way I can show you this is our script got to a certain point, it read through some information that spat out some directories, and one of them was temp. So we could pipe that into xargs and then go ls-alh, and the argument is now temp. So we're saying we want to look at the contents of temp. So if we do that, we can now see the contents of that directory. Whatever the standard output is, which is what's being passed through via this pipe, that gets converted into an argument for the command on the end of xargs. So xargs says, take the arguments from standard output and pass them to the command that's defined after me. That's essentially what xargs does. I am actually going to leave it there because I'm realizing this is getting on now, and I'm going to call it at that. So that's a lot of useful commands all in one. Hope you enjoyed it. So that's everything for now for useful commands, as I've been calling them. In the next video, we're going to start looking at managing processors, killing processors, and just generally how we view them and interact with them. So I'll see you in the next one.